Hello, everyone, and welcome to 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host slash producer today, Mr. Logan Landers, and today, a little things a little different here. As you know, we are 100 Yards of Football, but we are like to diversify ourselves. We like to talk about some other sports as well. And as you can see on the screen today, we're talking about a legend on the court in basketball at his time in college, going into the NBA, and in my opinion, one of the most forgotten stars in NBA history, Mr. Bob Lanier, best known for his time with the Detroit Pistons. But I can't do it by myself. I have to bring on not just a football encyclopedia, but just the encyclopedia of sports. Good friend of mine over the past couple of years. We've had some great videos together. Have another one coming up here in just a second. My guy, Mr. Football. We're going to call him Mr. Basketball right now. Vincent Turner, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, how you doing today, Logan? It's always a special time to be back with you. Been a long time since we've been in the saddle, my man.
Yes, sir. Hey, you're not kidding, man. Might be a little rusty today. Gotta just work through it and we'll be good to go. But hey, if you enjoy the video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe live on Facebook and YouTube. We just did some tremendous interviews earlier today. Please go check those out on all of our channels. And let's get into it, Mr. Turner. Bob Lanier, an absolute just amazing player. Like I said, born September the 10th, 1948, out there in Buffalo, New York. And man, Vincent, he had a tremendous run in college at St. Bonaventure right there. And let's talk about that. Let's go to his college days because his sophomore season, he was a little bit undersized now. 6'10 is his height, which, oh, for us 6'10, we think that's still a monster of a man. But man, they had some giants walking around in college back then. Let's talk about Bob Lanier back then. Sophomore season at St. Bonaventure, did a tremendous job. That 1968 tournament, man, he was just putting up tremendous, absolute amazing games. 32 points, 15 rebounds in that win against Boston College. And man, against North Carolina, tough loss though. He still had a tremendous day, 23-9 on the night. Like I said, they lost to Columbia a little bit later on. But man, let's talk about that. He was a second team All-American that season behind a guy who we might know. That's a little well-known fellow by the name of Lou Alcindor, who we all know is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So let's talk about that 1968 season. What you got to say about how he performed in that year, kind of his breakout year?
Well, I'm going to say this about Bob Lanier. Bob Lanier, those guys, you're right, his sophomore year, he had an season, played at a school that wasn't really known for college basketball at the time, St. Bonaventure. But the thing I liked about that year was that he put St. Bonaventure on the map. But if you go back to his story, he's from Buffalo, New York, same hometown as one great entertainer, Rick James. But there was a story in high school before we get up to the sophomore years that he was cut his sophomore year in his junior year. His freshman year, because the coach said he was too clumsy. So he went back, got himself together, and then made the team his junior year in high school. And from that point on, things changed. And the thing that a lot of people don't know about Bob Lanier back during that time was that he was recruited by 100 universities. Back in the 60s, he was recruited by 100 colleges in 1966. After the first starting all-black team won the championship in Texas El Paso. But the thing that really shocked me about Bob Lanier is that he could have went to North Carolina, as you just brought up, Logan. He could have went to UCLA. He could have went to Villanova. But he chose St. Bonaventure. And you want to know why? Because he was a very family man, because he wanted his family to see him play every game. And you saw what happened that year. He got St. Bonaventure to the NCAAs. His first year, I was 10 years old at the time. And then the next year, going his junior year, they didn't make the tournament. But really, his senior year was what he came alive. Yep. 27 points, led his team to the East Regional Championship, but he got hurt. Had a collision with Chris Ford, a former great coach, former great player, former All-American of Villanova, played professional with the Boston Celtics, and was a teammate of Bob Lanier. And then Bob Lanier hurt his knee and couldn't play in the NCAA Final Four that year. And leading up to that, as a little kid at 10 years old, I wanted to see was Bob Lanier was finally going to be on that kind of level going up against competition. Because in that Final Four that year, Jacksonville had the great Otis Gilmore and Dennis Bimbo, 2 7-footers. Then New Mexico State had Jimmy Collins and Sam Lacey and Charlie Chris. Charlie Chris from Atlanta Hawk. Then UCLA had the powerful Bruins, Henry Bippy, Curtis Rowe, Sidney Wicks, Steve Patterson. But not to see Bob Lanier get a chance, man, with that severe knee injury really, really had me distraught. But leading into the 1970 season, the NBA draft, he was the first overall pick. Still the first overall pick. And you think about all those players that came in with him in that 70 draft. Rudy Tomjanovich, Pistol Pete Maravich, Dave Cowens, Sam Lacey, the young man out of New York, Nate Archibald, and then the man who can twirl the baton, Mr. Calvin Murphy, out of the University of Niagara. So you think about everything that Bob Lanier and those players he came in with, that was outstanding. You think about his pro career. Got drafted by the Pistons, and the Pistons really didn't have one good season in 75 when Chris Fuller's teammate, they went 52-30 that year. And that was and played and got turned in Milwaukee Bucks. That's when I really say Bob Lanier was really good. Played on get past Austin and Philadelphia. And then Milwaukee teams that had Paul Presley, Sidney Moncrief, Marcus Johnson, Quinn Buckner. That's what I'm going to remember Bob Lanier about. And then him being the MVP in the All-Star game in 1982. But most of all, when you look at Bob Lanier, it's what he did after the game. After the game, finished his NBA career with 19,000 points, 9,600 total rebounds, averaged over 20 points in his career, 10 rebounds, had the biggest foot, a size 22 in the league. But if you look what everybody else said about him after he finished, they talked about his leadership with the youth, which is A+. He was a true legend that impacted the community. Did a lot of community service and a lot of foundations and YMCAs in Detroit and Milwaukee. Then he went global. The NBA had him as a global ambassador to go over to Africa and was teaching kids from poverty backgrounds. And I think about Bob Lanier and I say, hey, man, that's how all the stars are supposed to be doing it. And then his passion for the game, his integrity. And he was a father figure. Rick Mahorn, a former Detroit Pistons, said he was the greatest man he ever met. The values of Bob Lanier were outstanding, and his kindness, and his size of his foot was just like his heart. It was big as gold, man. And to just take away what people thought about Bob Lanier, you always go what your peers say about you. And I want everybody to listen to this. The great Willis Reed passed away a couple of months ago. And he said and acknowledged that Bob Lanier was the best all-around big man ever played in the NBA. The greatest person, integrity to this game. That's when we talk about being on 100 yards, but it's what I say about. And that's when I think about. And he was mean to the court, would knock you out. Just ask people like Ken Benson. Ask people how physical skills. I know a lot of people from the area in the water in Buffalo. And Bob Lanier.
Yes, sir. And
that's simple when you talk about the and then you think about what the guy done in was inducted in the NBA Hall of Fame in 1990. 14 seasons. He made 8 games. Excuse me, I see 2 games. Played 2 teams. The Detroit Pistons. One more you can say. Recruited by Miss Landers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think we lost Mr. You back? Yes,
yes,
sir.
I'm here.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So talking about Bob Lanier, and you mentioned his time in Detroit, Vincent, and he just could never get any ground. I believe he had 8 coaches in his tenure there, just carousel after carousel, just coach after coach, just couldn't get his footing. But he left a great impact. And like you mentioned, he got traded to Milwaukee. And like I say, he wasn't there for long. That's the thing people forget. He wasn't there for a long time. He was only there for a couple of seasons from 80 to 84. But he had such a good impact on that. Like you mentioned, he went into coaching for a short time with Golden State. He did a solid job there. But that's the thing, too. His off-the-court just experiences, had his name, at St. Bonaventure, it's called Bob Lanier Court. They renamed it after him. Had his number retired at both of his NBA teams, inducted into the Hall of Fames. And it's a guy, Mr. Turner, who I think of that it's one of those players who had a tremendous impact, but people just don't talk about him a whole lot because he didn't have a whole lot of individual accomplishments outside of his All-Star game appearances. He never got that championship ring. He was trying for it, but and like you said, unfortunately, though, knee injuries was just an absolute killer for him. Just could not get his healthy going into his first season with Detroit. He even admitted that he probably should have sat out because his knees were just in such bad shape coming off of his college career. But I think to me that shows just his perseverance and his tenacity, like you mentioned. He's a nice guy off the court, but on the court, you don't want to meet him in an alley. He is not afraid. He's not afraid to go at you, man, and be a little rough and tough with you. But overall, I think that Bob Lanier, that's why we're shining some light on him today, to show how great of a player he was on the court during his time at St. Bonaventure, going on to the Detroit Pistons and the Milwaukee Bucks. But more importantly, just his work off the court and how he was able to impact so many lives of both, kids, adults, men, women, and just his amazing heart for people. And that's what we're here to do. Mr. Turner, your final thoughts on Mr. Bob Lanier.
I'm going to say this about Bob Lanier. Bob Lanier would have been healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the knee injuries he had in the NBA, there's no question about it. We'd be talking about him in another light, better light on the court. Off the court, you could have asked for no better person. But if you haven't had them knee injuries as he did in his career coming into the league, we might be talking about Bob Lanier as being one of the 2 best centers that's ever played this game. In the same category as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, and Wilt Chamberlain. I can say that for sure. But he had a great career, and people don't really realize that the severity. He had 9 knee surgeries throughout his career, and he played on really bad knees. But that's what I'm going to remember about Bob Lanier. If his knees would have been healthy, he would have went down, I guarantee you, maybe one of the 2 best centers that ever played.
Yes, sir. Well, you heard it here first, folks, talking about NBA legend with Detroit Pistons, with the Milwaukee Bucks, and doing his thing out there with St. Bonaventure back in college, the great Bob Lanier. Mr. Turner, thank you so much for coming on today, providing your always great insight in the realm of basketball right now. Always a pleasure, man. It's been fun doing a video with you after a long time off, and here's to many more, my friend. But like I said, if you enjoyed the video, everyone like, comment, share, and subscribe. Like I said, check us out on Facebook, on YouTube. We have a ton of great interviews we've had over the last months or so. Go check those out and learn some amazing things about some amazing people. Once again, to my guest, Mr. Football, Vincent Turner. I've been your host and producer today, Logan Landers. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll talk to you again on another live episode. We'll see you.